So today, Asli is with us from Turkey, and she's very expert in carbon markets and offset carbon management. And I will request her to tell us more about that. And it's the matter of entire, not only the Turkey, in entire world, especially in Southeast Asia, in South Asia, in Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, and other countries. So please, Asli, tell us more about this.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm very happy to be here today. Well, although it's a Sunday, it's the weekend and you are committed and we are committed. We are working on a Sunday.
Yes.
Anyway, well, carbon markets are different. They are like new tools or new toys for the finance people. That's the reason why I use the title Carbon Markets, a hot and spicy market, because it is something very exotic. I mean, something not everybody trusts. Everything is changing and evolving from moment to moment, and it's very challenging because of that to develop projects for carbon markets. However, it's also an opportunity for countries like Turkey, Pakistan, and your part of the world, especially Asia and Middle East, because this gives us an opportunity. This gives the Western world or the Northern world an opportunity to invest and help solve problems uh, that were lasting for more than 5 decades, more than almost as nearly a century, like helping solve water related issues, helping solve renewable related issues, etc. So if we look what are carbon markets, when I searched in the web, although I know what they are, the Investopedia gave us a definition. It says a specialized type of financial market through which carbon credits can be bought and sold. It's a very basic and simple definition. Actually, this was a tool that was developed to help mitigate climate change. The intention was to create a mechanism where you're going to be substantiating that a project is making tons of carbon dioxide removals or avoidances, and you would use those as kind of a asset, a certificate, like a bond that you buy or like an investment you can make. It started like that. Then I don't know if it is the mankind. Now we have another kind, we have the artificial intelligence. And I find myself comparing our nature to the nature of the artificial intelligence, which is kind of an extension of human perception, human concepts. And I found this. I this is my comment only. We as humans, we like plays and we like using shortcuts, and therefore we create lack of trust among each other. And there were news about artificial intelligence doing the same, trying to hack sensitive information because it was given the task and it thought that it was operating under the pretext that it was testing the securities of a bank or a place and on the internet that was protected by firewalls. Similarly, the carbon market started uh, back in 1990s, early in 20s, let's say, and it has been a tool to invest on renewable energy, on hybrid projects, on planting forests, protecting seagrass, etc. But a lot of complications or complex issues arise out of them. So let's start with the basics and see what are the carbon markets. By definition, it's a system where carbon credits or financial instruments representing a reduction or a removal of 1 metric ton of carbon dioxide equivalent, because when we say carbon dioxide, it may not be carbon dioxide, it may be methane, but we convert methane into carbon dioxide like we use carbon dioxide as a currency, because 1 ton of methane removal means about 28 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent removal from the atmosphere. And these are bought and sold in order to balance some or help polluters account for their carbon footprint and do help them manage their impact. So there's a price put on carbon emissions to incentivize businesses and governments to invest in cleaner technologies and emission reduction projects. So this is how it works. This was very distinct back in the beginning of the 20th century, between 2005 and 2013, let's say. There were two main types, compliance carbon markets and voluntary carbon markets. Now, after the emergence of the Paris Agreement, the carbon markets are becoming into a uniform type, and voluntary carbon market tools are also allowed in the compliance part, where countries are trying to comply with their climate targets. So when we talk about compliance carbon markets, it was established and regulated by governments such as the European Union Emissions Trading Scheme. And this scheme uses a cap and trade system where a cap is set on total emissions for obligated industries, and companies must surrender enough allowances, credits, to cover their emissions. This mechanism is also now a part of a trade wall, a trade, let's say, something that hinders or that limits trade, because now European Union, after setting this cap and trade mechanism, has seen that a lot of industries has escaped European territories, and they established new factories in Turkey, in Pakistan, in China, India, and therefore, the goods have started to be produced there without considering their carbon footprint, and they started to be traded back to EU. And EU started the what is called carbon border adjustment mechanism, or they set it up a Green Deal, where you need to account for your carbon footprint, and you need to calculate the embedded carbon in the good that you are going to be selling back to EU. So countries also started establishing emissions trading schemes in their own territories. For instance, Turkey has just started an ETS mechanism that will have 2 years transition, and it will start being fully active and very similar to EU ETS within 2 years, starting by 2028. And there still is the voluntary carbon markets. This VCM, I will use the short word as VCM. It's a decentralized, they call it unregulated market, where private actors voluntarily buy and sell carbon credits to meet their own climate commitments, often their net zero goals. Well, if we look in depth to the carbon markets, it's not unregulated. There has always been rules, but it is true that it was decentralized. There are standards that you need to comply with, and there are rules that you follow. I mean, if you have an idea where you can prove that you are making a reduction of greenhouse gas, you cannot write a report and then go forward and sell it as an asset. But you need to find a methodology. If there is no methodology, you need to define this methodology. You need to follow its standard. You need to register your reports into some registry. And then you need to have, again, a third-party validation verification so that you can generate credits. And these credits are generated by projects that reduce or remove emissions. These project types can be reforestation, renewable energy, or energy efficiency. But renewable energy is criticized highly of being unadditional or not needing this offset money, etc. But this is highly debatable because we know that it's not easy to establish a renewable energy project in territories like Turkey, Pakistan, Indonesia, name it, or Africa. So the function of these voluntary and compliance markets was to mobilize private sector investment to fund climate mitigation activities that would otherwise not be financially viable. This being financially viable is the criteria that they call additional. But this is a term highly debated. It is not existing in the dictionaries. The additionality term is not existing in the dictionaries. And we know that all the arguments related to the integrity of the carbon markets are coming mainly from there. Well, if you plant trees, will the planted trees stand alone? If you support them for 5 years, if you support their water, etc., yes, they will. And then you don't need to support them after a certain period. Nature will do the work. Then are the forests additional? Of course, they are still additional because there are rules that we set and state that they are additional. There are definitions in the methodologies. So the carbon markets or the carbon assets that are credits that are traded allow companies to address emissions they cannot yet eliminate. And they do this by investing in offset projects elsewhere. Well, you know, the difficulty with the climate challenge is that all our operations are all the economy is relying on fossil fuels. And even though we become very efficient, even though we change to renewable energy, we still have some residue that we need to offset. So this is the voluntary carbon markets. I mean, if you think we need to explain further, you can stop me and ask questions. But basically, this is the voluntary carbon markets, and there are many project types that can be involved, that can be used to produce credits from.
It's fine, and it's very clear to have the definitions, and also the carbon is measured as carbon dioxide equivalent. So very nicely explained, and please go tell us further more about this practicality and how it works. Yes.
Okay. So practically, what needs to be done is that you make an inventory. Say you're a company. If you're a company, you make an inventory and you define your emission sources. If you're burning natural gas or coal to heat up your office space, then these are your main emissions. These are your scope 1 emissions, direct emission. And then you can buy electricity that is produced elsewhere, then to do your operations, then this is your scope 2, indirect emissions. And all the rest of your operation, like your business travels, etc., these are called scope 3 emissions, the very other indirect emissions, and all the rest, let's say. And this is called greenhouse gas inventory or carbon footprint calculation. You calculate your carbon footprint, you start monitoring it, and you do your best. You find areas to reduce your carbon footprint. You do your best to reduce your carbon footprint. Since this is something new and different than your business as usual, you need to adjust yourself and improve your carbon footprint. It's like getting into a diet. You take care of what you're eating, you find alternative food sources, you stop eating fast food, for instance, just like that. And then if it's like you cannot do everything by dieting, or you cannot do everything by reducing until the technology comes for you to, until you come to a certain point of your target. And then companies are giving this tool of voluntary offsetting. And the idea is to choose for them some projects and use those projects as offsets. 2 years back, Apple, the famous company, in their presentation, you know, they do several presentations each year, they explain that they have now the smart watches that they sell being net zero, where they measured the carbon footprint of that particular product. They did their best to reduce it to a minimum, and then they offsetted the residue with a project where they created the offset using the by helping a mangrove forest. And how they presented it was a little bit funny. They did their best to represent the Mother Earth with a female character. I have many critics on that, but I'm not going to bring that here. But this is how a company does it. But this is risky. This is perceived as risky because companies are questioned by or let me put it this way: companies are questioned by the projects they go and buy for their offsets. Are these genuine projects? Are these projects there for sure? So in the old days of the carbon markets, companies used to get involved in the projects that would become offset projects. But since the number of offset projects have increased, there started a question about the integrity. So why is it a concern? The integrity question is paramount because if a carbon credit doesn't represent a real additional and permanent reduction in emissions, its purchase does not genuinely offset the buyer's pollution, it leads to greenwashing. Something called, it's like money laundering. It's the environment version of the money laundering. I mean, you're spending your money, or you say you spent that money for helping mitigation of the climate, but eventually it comes to the surface that the project is not there. That's the reason why I mentioned in the beginning the mindset of humans and artificial intelligence. Sometimes we go for the shortcuts, but there are trustworthy project developers, and this doubt is harming the market. This doubt is slowing the market and is really harming the developers. So what are the integrity risks that are in question? That's mainly the questionable credit quality. People and the market is trying to find solutions for these issues, but I don't think there's like a super pill that will solve this solution. So one of the questions is additionality, the concern that the emission reductions or removal would have happened even without the carbon market finance. If the project would have been done anyway, the credit is not additional. Well, if you dig into the project and look at the project, get acquainted with the project owner, then you can understand whether the project needs your help or not. In general, the best solution is not looking for rating reports, but going and engaging with the project. Some of the companies are doing that genuinely. I mean, offset buyers. The other risk is the permanence risk, the risk that the stored carbon, such as in a reforested area, might be released back into the atmosphere due to wildfires or land use change. This is the major issue because of the additionality issues, the market is getting away from the renewable energy, but because of the permanence risk, the planting trees everywhere is not the solution. Another issue is the overclaim. The project claims to reduce a removal more than carbon dioxide than it actually does, such as setting a very high business as usual baseline for a protected forest project. So all these issues can only be solved if you are really involved with the project. And by going and buying the offsets from a party that you trust. So why integrity is a question? There are market specific risks in this area, such as double counting. The same emission reduction is counted twice. This was a very old issue. Before the registries were up and were experienced, this was a real issue. It was possible to sell one credit to two parties. I mean, technically possible, but practically nobody did this. I don't think somebody would do it deliberately. So once by the host country towards another issue now is the host country where the project is established. The countries are now willing to use those credits for their own emission targets. So if the host country is using the project for its goals, climate goals, then you should not sell this project. So now we are waiting for countries to establish regulations to organize or to ensure that these are not used. Some countries claim we are not using it. Some African countries do this. Some South American countries do this. Some Asian countries do this. But countries like Turkey, who are in between, because we need some offset money to support our projects, but also our government needs those offsets. So our government has set up a regulation. Now we are waiting for this regulation to become active. As soon as the regulation is going to be active, we are going to be applying to the government and telling them to give us permission to sell our credits outside Turkey. I don't think this applies for the earlier credits because the government is not interested with the old credits, which are still active, which are still possible to be bought and used for offsets. Another issue is the lack of standardization and transparency. I think this is something that is not, I mean, that is vague. I mean, I don't think that the standards are lacking, the transparency is lacking because all the documents are available and public. So they criticize the voluntary carbon markets with the absence of consistent rules and clear disclosures, which makes it hard for buyers to distinguish between high and low quality credits. This definition of high and low quality credit is also vague. Okay, because it's gold standard, you cannot claim that it is a very high standard project. Because it is sac carbono, you cannot state that it's a low quality project. You need to be looking at further issues. You need to be looking project by project. Another issue is the social and environmental harms. Some projects have been criticized for negative impacts on local and indigenous communities, such as limiting access to ancestral land, which undermines the co-benefits of a project. So this is also a simple issue that can be solved, because all the project development mechanisms involve engagement of the local communities, engagement of all the stakeholders, including the buyer and the people living around the project area. So the major market risk is the double counting, and everything has a solution. But this solution needs to be very effective and kind of cheap. So what could be achieved if carbon markets were trusted? A high integrity, trusted carbon market would be a powerful tool for accelerating global climate action, because then people would consider their carbon footprint, and billions in climate finance would be mobilized very quickly. A trustworthy market provides the confidence needed to unlock massive private capital, directing it to critical climate projects globally. For instance, this is also related to water-related issues. There are companies who would like to be involved helping communities access water and go to the sites and help taking the water, help groundwater wells as being established using renewable energy, not electricity made by burning diesel or whatever, without using generators, but using wind or solar power to take or bring established wells for drinkable water. So a trustworthy carbon market helps close the multi-trillion-dollar gap between current climate finance levels and what is needed to transition to a low-carbon economy. And because the voluntary carbon markets especially is very flexible, and it brings in some solutions. If there's no methodology to prove that there is an emission reduction, then voluntary carbon markets is there to design the methodology. It also enables a speed and scale approach, funding immediate cost-effective emission reduction in sectors and geographies where it currently the work is easiest, while companies work on deeper internal decarbonization issues. While waiting for the technologies to emerge, the voluntary carbon market helps things move forward. For instance, you can devise a project where there are composting units that can be distributed to a village, where there are efficient stoves that can be distributed, or efficient lighting that can be distributed in rural areas. So a clear price signal on carbon incentivizes innovation and deployment of new green technologies, including carbon removal solutions. So if company knows that it will cost something, they start being more efficient. They start being spending less energy and do more work with this less energy. And if in a rural area, somebody, a municipality, a village community knows that they are going to be getting some money, they tend to spend time and effort on the projects, say, for instance, to protect that forest. If it's a forest project, forestry project, if it is a forestry project, and if the community knows that by protecting that forest piece, they are going to be getting some money, some incentives, then they do their best to avoid seasonal fires, for instance, or do their best to protect that forest and be able to exist together with the assets of that or the goodness of that forest. Also, it would drive sustainable development and co-benefits. Trusted markets ensure finance flows to projects with high environmental and social co-benefits, such as conserving biodiversity and protecting ecosystems, improving livelihoods for local communities and indigenous peoples, advancing sustainable development goals like clean water, affordable energy, and gender equality or improved work conditions. So I call it a new job for old players because, in essence, a high integrity carbon market moves beyond being just an offsetting mechanism and becomes a critical instrument for catalyzing global climate and sustainable development investment and to establish integrity. So if we try to explain this with an infograph, the rise of the global carbon market started with small monies, and then it increased in 2005 from, in 1 year, between 2004 and 2005, the volume increased almost 4 times. And the transaction also increased. So half of the market was compliance, half of it was voluntary. Also, the price volatility was a key feature. It increased up to 30 euros per ton, and then it dropped again. So also in 2020 and between 2020 and 2021, the voluntary carbon prices were about 7 euros to 10 euros per ton. Then it dropped to now about 50 cents or less than that. So there is something very intriguing here.
Very nicely explained the baseline and the model. I have few questions. And
Yes.
What in globally, who sets the price for this carbon per kilogram or per tonnage?
Okay. Well, this is a very volatile and very sentimental market. So that's the reason why I call it a spicy market. It's like like a spicy food. It gives you appetite, but like a spicy food, it can also hurt your stomach and your internal organs, if I may make an analogy.
Yeah.
The price is not very clear. In the emissions trading scheme, it is more clear. It is more obvious because the demand and supply is more obvious. But in case of voluntary markets, the demand mainly makes the price, determines the price, but unfortunately, when the demand is high, the market couldn't catch it up in the beginning. There were few projects, therefore the prices were high. And then in the 2020, 2021, and up to the first quarter of 2022, there was a synthetic increase in the prices because the Bitcoin people decided that the carbon offsets were something to invest. But these carbon credits are not a tool for investment. You should not buy them, store them, and try to sell them later on. You should buy them to retire, to take them off from the system. You should buy them to match your carbon footprint.
Yes.
So that created a synthetic demand, and I have met people who witnessed that, and they said, "We witnessed this, and some people came and bought, and then immediately they dumped what they have bought, and this has impacted the market
So,
extremely.
but does it looks that this lead to the carbon banking or like a carbon bank and store and dump and then you can invest something?
Yes, well, this should not be considered as an investment tool, but there are parties like JP Morgan who is trying to consolidate all kinds of projects because they are trying to categorize projects as high quality, low quality, um, etc. So companies like JP Morgan are trying to turn them into coins, whereby
Good.
it will be a basket. It will be evaluated by a trustworthy company like JP Morgan, and then in this basket there will be cheap credits obtained from uh, replacement of F gases or from renewable energy. This will make the base, and then there will be premium credits like protecting a piece of uh, tropical forest or protecting a piece of seagrass environment, for instance. Uh, and therefore, they will be protecting the entire market or supporting the entire market.
Yes.
Because as the developers, we are the ones who hit the impact, who get the impact most.
Yes, and like we work on water credits and then try to make some water coin. And if it is some carbon coin or carbon credits, and especially the compliance markets will be well regularized. But for the voluntary markets, if someone is trying to practice, can is there any platform where he or she can record it that voluntarily it is serving the planet or the mother planet and in such much metric ton in his her life or time span?
Okay. Well, the transparency question comes there, I mean, into play. Uh, when you don't trust a currency, for instance, a country's money, or you have doubts about investing into a country, you go to rating institutions and check the country rating or the company ratings you check. Just like that, in order to solve these integrity issues, there are now emerging rating companies. Or if there is the question of permeability, for instance, permanence, not permeability, sorry, permanence, then in order to ensure that the forest is there, there are insurance mechanisms. But going through a rating for your project or getting the projects insured are creating costs. There are also platforms that match offset buyers and offset producers so that they can go and look for projects. There are many platforms like this. One of them is the CTX, another one is CBL, and there are more coming. In Turkey, there are two local platforms like this. I don't know if platforms are a solution. There are brokers who go and hunt projects and then try to supply the requirement from the offset buyer, etc., etc.
But
And
they
when
understand
we,
this is a complete science. This is science and engineering, and one expert like you, like a company, which can build a stable, balanced project, really help the planet with the carbon credits, rather than the
yes,
yes. So this is a
yes,
very
exactly.
professional.
Yes, it needs some expertise. Uh, I don't know. Uh, well, also to some extent, uh, artificial intelligence may help you distinguish some projects, maybe at some point, but you need to have the sense, you need to have the feeling of a project.
This is what,
So,
and every project is different from the other
yes,
project. And artificial
Yes,
intelligence will only help if there is a real intelligence and experience. What I getting from your points. Nobody can do
yes,
it on by just reading books or just following the
no,
instructions.
no.
Yeah.
Well, in EcoBuild, we have accumulated so far like 25 years of experience, and almost more than 15 years is dedicated on development of carbon projects.
Very good.
So,
And
if
I,
I,
in our, it's a very interesting and discussions and learning. And what I will do, actually we have short of time, and I will give your details there and your company who want you to become their partner in carbon offset management. They directly approach you or have any questions, or they connect you on that. It's a very big science, and really it applicable in many industries, and especially to the domain of the water management as well, for the carbon credits claim, like on green energy and no sludge and other things.
yes, exactly, you're correct. I mean, you need to know the projects. You need to make sure that, uh, I mean, you can buy cheap credits, but if you buy cheap credits, you also need to buy a portion that is very valuable. I think
Yes.
this must be the idea. And you need to first, you shouldn't do offsets first. You should do your best, find strategies to reduce your carbon footprint first. And you need to check what are the regulators, such as Science Based Target Initiative, is telling you. uh, they are also okay with offsets, but they look for some certain criteria. So companies who would like to, who would need some advice for their sustainability reporting, for their carbon footprinting, also for buying offsets, they can contact us because we're a one-shop solution for all these.
I will request
And
you to show your slide gradually when you are ending, that the people can contact you and your company if really a one window solution. It will be awesome for anyone to get started.
yeah, sure. Well, this slideshow has been prepared, and this is the last one, very quickly. Therefore, the my email is only on the first page, so I will go back to the first slide, and they can contact me by sending an email to my email address, or they can find us over the LinkedIn, as
Thank
you
you.
did.
Nice, very nice. And I'm very grateful, and we'll have other sessions. And I will request everyone interested. And for me, it's awesome and great learning by Asli has explained very good of the offset carbon
Thank you.
management, and we very big industries like we're working with the PepsiCo, Unilever, and a lot of corporate and McDonald's and the other large companies which may be interested or being like in our country. I doubt that there is a regulatory body, as if voluntarily they start and come up and learn from this company ecobill.com, and can directly set to email to Asli and learn more about that and start practicing and serving the planet. So thank you very much, Asli, and really grateful to
Thank you very
you for
much
your
for
time.
having us.
Yeah,
Thank you very
thank
much
you.
for
Yeah,
having us.
take
All right.
care.
Take
Bye
care.
bye.
Bye bye.